Therapeutic Goods Administration has issued a recall for dozens of cough medicines which could contain a potentially life-threatening ingredient. There are 55 products, including syrups and lozenges, which contain the ingredient pholcodine.
55 cough mixtures and lozenges containing an ingredient called pholcodine.
They all contain pholcodine. It's a rare risk, but potentially fatal.
The TGA has identified 50 cases, including one fatality, which has led to the recall.
In the past year, 50 surgical patients had reactions blamed on pholcodine and one person died.
The theory is that the exposure to pholcodine can stimulate the formation of antibodies which cross-react with the drugs that are used to paralyse muscles during major surgery.
So that risk has been known for quite a few years, going back to 2015 and even before that. So going back to 2015, the TGA had actually declined a request. This request had already been made. They said, oh, no, it's all good. The risks are that low versus the benefits. And now they've dramatically changed their tune, and it's all over the news, right at this very particular point in time, which I find peculiar. And the European Medicines Agency, they did the same thing back in 2012. They assessed it, said, nah, it's all good. And they didn't support the ban because they just said, well, look, this is just circumstantial. And then 10 years later, right at this point in time, in sort of, what would you say, around the same time after the results of widespread experimentals has been out there, they decided on the last 14th of December that that's it, we've had enough. And the UK, they've done the exact same thing in March 2023. Everyone's doing it exactly at the same time. It's incredible. And they haven't taken the approach that, the risk has been that low, we've just made a decision, we just won't restock and let existing stocks be sold. Now, this is urgent. It's urgently recalled. And
within days, you may not find the cough suppressant you're looking for.
In Australia, pharmacists are ripping it off the shelves, and look how much money that the pharmaceutical companies aren't going to make. I mean, ordinarily, the government's decisions don't sort of go against their profits. So this is just sending out a lot of alarm bells as to there must be some ulterior motive as to what's going on. So I glance at this stuff and how it works. So it freely crosses the blood-brain barrier, acts primarily on the central nervous system. That's interesting, causing depression of the cough reflex. And its direct cough on the reflex center is the medulla. No need for a deep dive into brain surgery. Enough information's here. The medulla contains the cardiac, respiratory, vomiting, and centres, therefore deals with the autonomic functions of breathing, heart rate. Well, isn't that interesting? It's back to its mechanism of action. So it has a direct effect by depressing the cough reflex. In other words, inhibiting how this part of the brain is working. So obviously it doesn't inhibit this part of the brain to the point that it stops your heart, but it slows down its activity, which if there are, say, other things across the blood-brain barrier, I'm not sure what there possibly could be, would it maybe also inhibit the action of those other substances? Say, kind of lipid nanoparticles, without going into any detail, might arrive there. We don't know where from. Can you see where this might be going, given the timing of these bans? Over in the US, pholcodine is banned. So you've got the equivalent of a very large population acting as a placebo group. I don't think they would be studying the adverse events that greatly. Well, they're not reporting on it, so they're obviously not studying it that greatly. They're not looking at all the nuances and just compiling all the figures. I mean, looking for maybe even a specific reaction, but they might have noticed there's not as many Damar Hamlins outside of the US.
11 years ago, Narelle Bolton had such a reaction on the operating table and died for 90 seconds.
So according to this article from The Guardian UK, it's been around since the 1950s. Not exactly a new kid on the block. And there's 55 products. So that's a hell of a chunk of pharmaceutical profits that they've just suddenly decided to... And they said there was one death. That's one death from this medicine. It's only linked, by the way. It's still only a theory. Just seems a bit odd that the regulators and the media and the government and health departments are just sort of shrugging their shoulders at, 17% excess deaths.
Dozens of popular over-the-counter cough medicines are being pulled from pharmacy shelves.
Yeah, they're sprung into action over one death. They might have only been for 90 seconds. So the UK government, though, they've got an alert on it. So the risk is low, however, it's less than 1 in 10,000. Now, that's not 1 in 10,000 of the population. That's just 1 in 10,000 if you happen to have taken a cough medicine and then you're on the operating table. So it's obviously, virtually non-existent. Well, Professor Claire Anderson, though, she's stated here, the withdrawal is needed as safety of patients is paramount. All medicines on the market are safe and effective, she added. Now, you know, might be thinking, well, hang on a minute. The TGA has listed 14 deaths. That's just what they've admitted to. What, could there be more? No, there's not more. That's 14. But that's still 14 times more than the supposed one death from this anaphylaxis. And yet, they're still out there and they're only provisional. But see, she says medicines on the market. So that's the operative word. No, not so much experimental products or medicine she's talking about. I think we should make a note of that.
It is always good for the approval body of government to err on the side of caution.
So it says the unscripted line, this is all his own words from a guy who's wearing the attire of a pharmacist. That's for these types of products, ones that, well, even symptoms-wise, kind of competition for the experimental safe and effectives. Because if you haven't got a cough and, you know, you don't go to doctors or you don't know, oh, you better get, you know, something in your arm with lots of nanoparticles, well, it's going to lower that number of injections of something that the TGA has, you know, recorded as having a much higher what he mentioned, and has an effect, a suppressing effect on an area of the body, the brain, where the pharmaceutical experimental safe and effectives also congregate, allegedly. All right, that's it for this one. Like I said, very peculiar timing. That's just an observation.